Good afternoon. It's Thursday, the 19th of March. I'm Erin Viner, and this is IBA News broadcasting from Jerusalem. The U.S. State Department says that it is reevaluating its position following campaign promises from Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu that he is no longer committed to a two-state solution with the Palestinians. Washington also says that the Prime Minister's re-election will not affect the Obama administration's position on the Iranian nuclear talks.
We are not going to get ahead of any decisions about what the United States would do with regard to potential action at the UN Security Council. I will reiterate that it has long been the position of the United States under Republican and Democratic presidents, and it has been the position of successive Israeli governments that only a two-state solution that results in a secure Israel alongside a sovereign and independent Palestine can bring lasting peace and stability to both peoples. A two-state solution is the only way for the next Israeli government to secure Israel as a Jewish and democratic state. We believe that it's in the best interest of the United States, Israel, and the region. The Prime Minister, as we all know, in his comments earlier this week, indicated that he is no longer committed to pursuing this approach. Based on the Prime Minister's comments, the United States is in a position going forward where we will be evaluating our approach with regard to how best to achieve a two-state solution. Obviously, I'm not going to prejudge at this point what that means.
Given the Prime Minister's stance that he unveiled in the last few days before the vote, that would seem to make it much more difficult now for your two-state solution to come into being.
Well, I think that's why I just stated that given the Prime Minister's comments, we're in a position going forward where we will be evaluating our approach with regard to how best to achieve a two-state solution. Now, our position remains that we continue to believe that the preferred path to resolve this conflict is for the parties to reach an agreement on final status issues directly. But certainly, while that's been our position, obviously the Prime Minister's position has changed.
Or are you hoping that the Prime Minister maybe changes his mind, that this was just some kind of campaign rhetoric that he used to, drum up support?
I'm just not going to outline the options, Matt, but obviously we're aware of the comments. Certainly the fact that he's changed his position has an impact, and we're certainly aware of that.
All right. And then more broadly, we're now in a situation where the government of the United States and the government of Israel are diametrically opposed on two extremely significant international security issues: the Iran negotiations and the Middle East peace process, such as it is, was, or will be. Are you concerned at all that this is that we find ourselves in a situation where the President and the Prime Minister of Israel are at such loggerheads on two issues that the U.S. has traditionally regarded as being extremely important?
Well, Matt, I think no matter what government is formed, that's obviously the process that they're in now. We will continue our close military, intelligence, and security cooperation with Israel. This close security cooperation is essential to the security of the Israeli people, and it certainly is in the interests of the United States. We've been long familiar with the views of the Prime Minister on Iran. We don't think that his win has impacted the Iran negotiations or will. Certainly his recent comments on opposition to the Palestinians having a state have caused us to evaluate our approach moving forward. But beyond that, there are issues we work together on that we will continue to.
A two-state solution will be impossible to achieve with an Israeli government headed by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. That's the word from Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas in his first official comment following the elections that saw Netanyahu's apparent return to power. Referring to the premier's statements ruling out a Palestinian state, Abbas said that it proves that the Israeli government is not seriously seeking a political solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. The United Nations also commented on the elections, saying that the world body expects Israel to continue negotiations toward the creation of a Palestinian state, despite the statements from Netanyahu.
It's incumbent on the new Israeli government, once formed, to create the conditions for a negotiated final peace agreement with the active engagement of the international community that will end the Israeli occupation and realize the creation of a viable Palestinian state living in peace and security alongside Israel. This includes the cessation of illegal settlement building in the occupied Palestinian territory. The Secretary General firmly believes this is also the best and only way forward for Israel to remain a democratic state. He urges the Israeli government to resume without further delay the transfer of the tax revenues it is obligated to dispense to the government of Palestine in accordance with the Paris Protocol.
The American Jewish Committee has also expressed concern over the Prime Minister's statements regarding a two-state solution, saying that the issue must remain on the table and that Washington and Jerusalem need to bridge their differences.
Well, I mean, clearly, as identified in the last couple of days before the election, there was a question raised about Israel's commitment to a two-state solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. The United States and the international community strongly supports a two-state solution, and the Prime Minister himself and his predecessors as Prime Minister have supported a two-state solution. I expect we'll get back on that track. Some of this obviously is not just in the hands of the Israeli government, it's very much in the hands of the Palestinian Authority, which has shown itself significant ambivalence to a negotiated two-state solution. We have to move back into that direction. Well, there were some harsh things that were said and some actions that were taken in the final weeks of a campaign. We're not unfamiliar with such things happening in election campaigns in a lot of countries. Some things that affected the tenor of the relationship between Israel and the United States, but it's very much in the understanding of the Prime Minister and of the Israeli voters that the relationship with the United States is hugely important to Israel. And it's certainly on the mind of Americans that Israel is an important ally. I expect that the leaders of both countries will find a way to patch up the differences that were very much in evidence in the last few weeks. The U.S.-Israel relationship has been strong, will be strong, must be strong.
The Central Elections Committee today released the final unofficial results for the 20th Knesset elections. Voter turnout was about 4.2 million people, adding up to 72.3% of eligible voters. Only about 4.5% of the cast ballots went to parties that failed to pass the threshold, and an estimated 44,000 were disqualified for technical reasons. Nearly 200,000 absentee and military ballots were counted by this morning, and the additional votes finalized Likud receiving a 30th seat, while Meretz clinched its 5th. That likely means that Meretz leader Zahava Gal'on will remain in the Knesset and not fulfill her offer to resign if her faction had only received 4 mandates as it initially appeared. The losers of the final count were the Joint Arab List, which dropped to 13, and United Torah Judaism, which finished with 6. Absentee ballots are not available to all citizens, but limited to soldiers, overseas diplomats, the disabled, sailors, prisoners, hospital patients, and medical staff. The votes are added to the overall results only after the Central Election Committee is able to verify that these individuals did not vote at their official polling stations. And here now is a breakdown of the mandates won by the 10 parties that will serve in the 20th Knesset. Likud 30, Zionist Union 24, Joint Arab List 13, Yesh Atid 11, Kulanu 10, Habayit Yehudi 8, Shas 7, United Torah Judaism 6, Israel B'Teinu 6, and Meretz with 5. And now that we know the final count, as well as how many seats that each party received, the next stages of the political process are already underway, which are the forming of a coalition and the race for ministerial positions. Here to tell us the latest is IBA's political correspondent, Eli Wogelenter.
As it becomes apparent that Prime Minister Netanyahu will be the one to form the next government, Likud officials have already begun fighting amongst themselves for ministerial positions in the 20th Knesset. Mari reported that Netanyahu might offer the position of Justice Minister, formerly held by Tzipi Livni, to Likud MK-elect Benny Begin. While he was absent from the previous government, Begin returned to the Likud's list in 2015 after being offered the reserved 11th spot by Netanyahu. Current Defense Minister Moshe Ya'alon is likely to keep his position, but he faces competition first from Bayit Yehudi Chairman Naftali Bennett. His number 2, Ayelet Shaked, told Army Radio today that Netanyahu had a moral obligation to her party for standing by him, and as such should give them the public security portfolio, among others. It's not a condition, it's a demand, Shaked said. Religious Zionists gave their blood and guts to elect Netanyahu, and now the community expects to be compensated. Also competing for defense minister is Yisrael Beitenu Chairman Avigdor Lieberman, who currently serves as foreign minister. Lieberman announced on Monday that he will demand the defense portfolio as a condition of joining the government. If he does not receive the defense portfolio, it is likely Lieberman will instead seek to keep the foreign affairs portfolio. Also competing for that position are senior Likud ministers Gilad Erdan and Yuval Steinitz. It's very likely that Kulanu chairman and former Likud minister Moshe Kachlon will receive the finance portfolio as promised by Netanyahu several days before election. Transportation Minister Yisrael Katz was mentioned before the election as a potential candidate for finance minister, but since Netanyahu has promised that position to Kachlon, it is likely Katz will receive another senior economic portfolio. Turning to the Haredi parties, Shas and United Torah Judaism, which were left out of the coalition last time due to a pact between Jewish Ha'om chairman Naftali Bennett and Yesh Atid chairman Yair Lapid, are expected to demand from Netanyahu to cancel some of the moves implemented by Lapid in the last government, like criminal sanctions against Haredim who evade the army draft, as well as cuts of 50% in the budgets of Kol Yeshivot. In addition, Shas chairman Aryeh Deri has demanded a rise in minimum wage and lowering the VAT on basic commodities as a precondition for his party entering the coalition. Both Shas and United Torah Judaism are expected to request posts they have held in the past, namely the Interior Ministry for Deri and the Ministry of Religious Affairs for another Shas MK. Shas is also expected to ask for responsibility over the Israel Lands Authority, a demand that has also been made by Kulanu leader Moshe Kachlon. United Torah Judaism is expected to request control of the Ministry of Health, in which MK Yaakov Litzman served as deputy minister between 2009 and 2013, as well as the chairmanship of the Knesset's Finance Committee, a role held by MK Moshe Gafni between 2009 and 2013. Netanyahu plans to present a new government by April 22nd in time for Independence Day celebrations, according to today's Jerusalem Post. President Reuven Rivlin is to begin consultations with party leaders on Sunday, most probably appointing Netanyahu to form a government after official results come in next Wednesday. And in his first interview since Tuesday, Zionist Union head Isaac Herzog told Army Radio today that he does not intend to join a Likud-led government. He prefers to sit in the opposition and will offer the public a viable alternative. And he blasted Netanyahu for damaging Israel's international relationships, saying Netanyahu has made a mess and he refuses to clean it up. Aaron?
Thanks for that report. Well, world media is still buzzing about Prime Minister Netanyahu's election victory. Reporter Alexandra Jen now joins me here in the studio to bring us a few examples.
Yes, Aaron, the Israeli election has certainly been at the top of the news cycle. Russian TV questions whether Netanyahu will be able to deliver on campaign promises.
Now, in his victory speech and also in his election promises, Netanyahu made radical statements about what he would implement if and when he became prime minister again. He now needs to deliver on those promises. And not only that, but questions remain whether or not he will be able to deliver on issues that he was not able to deliver on before these elections. The voter turnout was particularly high, and it was unprecedented within the Arab-Israeli population. This may suggest that the Arab community inside Israel is consolidating against Netanyahu, and there certainly has been a lot of strong words from both the Palestinian population inside Israel and Arab countries outside Israel warning against what a Netanyahu victory means, particularly vis-à-vis the peace process with the Palestinians.
Qatari-based Al Jazeera is focusing on Netanyahu's comment at the end of the campaign against a Palestinian state.
I think that whoever moves to establish a Palestinian state or intends to withdraw from territory is simply yielding territory for radical Islamic terrorist attacks against Israel. This is the genuine reality that was created here in the past few years.
Basking in another election victory, the Prime Minister went to pray at the Western Wall and was already starting to temper the fiery rhetoric of a campaign in which he labelled those Israelis who opposed him as traitors.
I appreciate the decision by Israel's citizens to elect me and my friends against all odds and in the face of powerful forces, and I will do everything I can to care for the security and welfare of all Israelis.
But in the wake of this election, there can no longer be any illusions about Israeli acceptance of a Palestinian state.
The tone in the U.S. news media depends on the source. CNN is generally critical of Netanyahu on the Palestinian state issue and on his rocky relationship with President Obama.
But those hard-line statements that saved his job may only deepen his bad blood with the Obama administration, who was privately hoping for his ouster. U.S. officials say they are waiting to see if Netanyahu dials back. If he doesn't, it could be a game changer for both the peace process and U.S.-Israel relations.
Certainly, the fact that he's changed his position has an impact. I'm not going to prejudge what we'll do. The election was yesterday. Those comments were made 2 days ago, so I'm sure we'll continue to discuss.
Fox News, on the other hand, could not top its enthusiasm for Netanyahu's re-election.
A couple of weeks ago, the White House very clearly did not want Benjamin Netanyahu coming to Congress. He came, he made his case. Last night he got reelected. His Likud party wound up with 30 seats out of 120. That's great for him. Your reaction?
I think it's great. I think he's a strong leader. I think he says it like it is. I'm pleased to see him reelected, and I actually think the Obama administration helped contribute to his victory because of the way that they treated him. It helped him consolidate his coalition so that he could have this landslide victory, and I'm pleased to see it happen.
But leave it to American satirical TV host Jon Stewart to put the election result into perspective.
Do you happen to know, has he received a congratulatory phone call yet from President Obama?
As of an hour ago, he had not.
How long is it going to take the president to call Netanyahu?
Has the White House made any comments about this?
Not yet.
I think it's really interesting. The president has not called with a congratulatory phone call.
You never call? You never write? I win an election and yet I sit by the phone?
World media coverage of the election peaked on election eve and is now beginning to fade as the world media moves on to other headlines. Aaron.
Yeah, we can kind of expect that. It's not going to be their top story for long. And we have other things as well. Thanks, Alex. In other news, talks between the West and Iran over its disputed nuclear program are ongoing, with little known on whether any actual progress has been achieved. IBA's Margot Dudkevich brings us this update about the talks in Switzerland.
Meetings between U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry and his Iranian counterpart Mohammad Javad Zarif in Lausanne, Switzerland, entered their fourth day today, with the sides aiming to reach a framework deal to curb Iran's nuclear program by the end of this month. With the March 31st deadline looming overhead, the sides appear to be intent on trying to close gaps and bridge a deal. U.S. State Department spokeswoman Jen Psaki told reporters the U.S. is pushing forward, but refused to elaborate. A sign that a deal is far from in the making was possibly reflected by Psaki, who said that at present there's been no plan to convene the foreign ministers of the P5+1 countries, the US, Germany, France, Britain, Russia and China, with Iran.
So the Iranians are coming to the negotiating table saying we want concrete and verifiable assurances that every commitment that you make will not only be made, but there will be penalties if, in fact, you do not fulfill your commitments. So it's added another layer of complexity to the negotiations that didn't exist before.
Zarif was quoted in the Iranian media saying discussions are focusing on technical details and raised doubts that an agreement between the sides will be reached this week.
Good morning to you.
Have you made progress, sir?
We are making progress, but there are issues that need to be resolved. Okay. Even more progress is needed, huh?
Which issues need progress, sir?
All of them. No, some of them.
Kelsey Davenport, director of the Non-Proliferation Policy Arms Control Association, described the situation as fluid.
That it certainly is true that they're very close to reaching an agreement. But these are very complex technical issues, and changes in one area can result in changes in another area, a domino effect per se.
Locals in the Swiss city appeared to be less enamored by the talks, which has brought a heightened security presence and sealed roads every time Kerry or Zarif venture outside the hotel. Taking a brief respite from the intense talks, several times this week Kerry took advantage of the fresh air to cycle and clear his head, while Zarif opted to walk briskly. While the sides have succeeded in narrowing some of the gaps, the U.S. is seeking an agreement that will restrict Iran over a 10-year period to enrich uranium. However, it will be allowed to retain 6,000 to 8,000 centrifuges and reduce its stockpile of enriched uranium. Differences remain concerning existing and future sanctions, with the U.S. agreeing to lift only some already in place.
I think both sides are very committed to reaching an agreement. They've made progress on a lot of the more difficult issues over the past few months, and they know that time is short. They set a target date for reaching the framework by the end of March, and they want to meet that goal.
Margot Dudkevich, IBA News.
Turning now to arts and entertainment and the opening of the Flamenco Days Festival at the Suzanne Dalal Center this evening. This is the 20th anniversary of the energetic annual spring event, with renowned local and international flamenco dancers and choreographers coming together for 3 days to concentrate on a variation of performances, ranging from the purest, high-quality Spanish flamenco to the contemporary. There will be special productions and co-performances with Israeli and Spanish artists, workshops, shows especially aimed at children, and a special class available for 6 through 13-year-olds. The event is co-hosted by the Adi Foundation, created in memory of the late Adi Agmon, who was an ardent fan of flamenco. The highlight is the nation's only competition in the dance genre, and the winner will receive a grant to pursue 6 months of flamenco studies in Spain. That's the Flamenco Days Festival opening at the Suzanne Dalal Center in Tel Aviv this evening, continuing until Saturday night. And now taking a look at local finance, and the Shekel today put in a mixed performance, while share prices on the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange were up across the board. Here's a look at the afternoon numbers. The IBA weather team tells us to expect another slight drop in temperatures tomorrow, accompanied by the chance of light rain showers in the north. Here's the forecast at home and abroad over the next 24 hours. Thank you for being with us this afternoon. Hope to see you again tomorrow, and I'll be back with the latest breaking news from Israel. I'm Erin Viner, wishing you a wonderful evening and shalom from Jerusalem.